Honest to God, this is my second time trying to record this. The first time I didn't press record. So hi everyone, I hope that you're doing well. It's January 2nd today and it's sort of that strange little in-between time after Christmas, but before everything else really starts again. And I always find these first few days of the year a bit odd. For most, there's usually a quietness that makes you kind of reflect sometimes whether you want to or not. I hope you had a good Christmas, or at least a peaceful one, however you spent it, with family, friends, or just a bit of time to yourself. And personally, I've been kind of looking back at the past year, thinking about plans I made, how things went versus how I thought they were going to go. And I suppose in a way that's what brings me to today's episode. I had hoped to record many episodes over the break, but each time I went to, I just couldn't, or I suppose I just wouldn't. And before we get into things properly, I should say that I am aware that I come across as a bit of a whinger sometimes. I ramble on about things, overthink, and moan more than I probably should, and yet somehow you're still here listening, and I genuinely really appreciate it. It means a lot. I know that I have not been producing episodes, and it's frustrating when you sign up to a podcast and you subscribe to it. When you subscribe to a podcast and episodes just randomly stop and you don't know what's going on. So I do have things that I want to do episodes on, but they're kind of more outdoor ones, so they're not really good for this weather. So I'm hoping there'll be more episodes in spring for sure, and then we'll just see how we go. When I came up with the idea of this podcast, I was so excited about it. It was something that I just really wanted to do, really wanted to invest time in, hopefully help others with and whatnot. And the fact that it's been so successful has been just wonderful. It was one of my highlights of 2025 for sure. So thank you. Let's do this then. Basically, I have thought about quitting archery, like not in a dramatic storm out kind of way, not throwing my bow down in a corner, declaring that I'm done. It was much quieter than that. It was very slow, kind of invisible at first. And it really showed up when I stopped going to shoot. There had been some sort of a change before that. I had noticed things, but I suppose I just ignored them, but it really did show up when I stopped going to shoot. One missed session turned into two, and then suddenly it had been weeks and before I really kind of copped onto it. I think it's probably about 2 months, if not a bit more, since I actually last shot. And what is hard to admit is that I really didn't want to shoot. My bow is kept in a room here, and I've been avoiding that room. And it wasn't something that I was conscious of at first. But then I noticed that I would just close over the door if the door was open. I used to love going into that room. That was like a really calm, nice room for me. But I really avoided going anywhere near it. And seeing the bow felt like being reminded of something that I wasn't dealing with. And as we know, I shoot indoors in a hall, and that space used to feel very kind of grounding for me and fun and genuinely, honestly, very therapeutic. But somewhere along the way, that feeling changed, and walking into that hall started to feel heavy, like I was stepping into a place where I had to face expectations I wasn't meeting. Burnout, and I suppose that's what it is, for me, hasn't felt like hating archery. It's felt like not wanting to feel what archery had started to bring up. I'd set up, I'd draw, release, and immediately analyse everything. My stance felt off, my anchor felt inconsistent. Every bad arrow felt like it was like a personal thing, like it was saying something about me rather than just being part of the process. And I kept asking myself the same questions. Why am I still struggling with this after a year? Why does it look easier for everyone else? Why don't I feel confident yet? Maybe I've hit my limit. Maybe I'm just not built for this. Why can I group 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 arrows, but if I shoot 3 arrows, why can I not get them anywhere near each other on the backstop? And the frustrating part was that I still cared. If I didn't care, I would have avoided the bow completely. I would have just put it away and moved on. But I cared enough that seeing it reminded me of something that I felt I wasn't meant for. And part of my non attendance, by the way, genuinely came down to real life. Work commitments ramped up. I was ill for a bit. Then I was ill a bit more. Then, most recently, when I was going to go back, I had car trouble. And all of those were legitimate reasons not to get to the hall. But the part that I didn't want to admit at first, I suppose, where that would have really annoyed me before, lately I felt relieved that I had a reason not to go, relieved that the decision was made for me, relieved that I didn't have to walk into the hall and confront how I felt about my shooting and about myself. And that's when I realised it wasn't just about logistics. I've been shooting for just over a year now. Well, I should have been. And I think this is a strange and kind of uncomfortable stage to be in. I'm not new anymore. I know enough to recognise bad shots and inconsistencies, but not always enough to fix them. When I first started, progress felt incredible. Groups tightened quickly, improvements were obvious. Every session felt like a win. I left the hall buzzing, thinking about what I'd learned, looking forward to next time, thinking that I was actually good at something. But around the 8 or 9 month mark, that progress slowed down, not because I got worse, although I felt I did, but because the improvements became smaller and very subtle. Instead of big leaps, it became about tiny refinements like millimeters of alignment, timing of the release, mental steadiness. And those changes don't feel rewarding in the same way. My scores didn't jump, my grouping didn't suddenly shrink. So my brain started telling me that nothing was working and I was making a fool out of myself. And I've always said that I chase dopamine all the time, and I was not getting dopamine whatsoever at this stage. It was just antagonizing me more than giving me any enjoyment. And I also started comparing myself more to others in the hall. I know I shouldn't, but I did. I used to always just kind of watch people anyway, but I suddenly noticed I was watching people in a different way, watching archers who looked calm and effortless, people who seemed to know exactly what they were doing, and I did it without meaning to. Previously, when I watched people, it was just kind of like, oh yeah, that's great, look at them, fair play. But then suddenly it was like, what are they doing that I'm not doing? Why are they getting it and I'm not getting it? It was just a lot of comparison. And that quietly drained the enjoyment out of it for me. At the same time, archery had become part of how I saw myself. If people asked me if I had hobbies, along with things like, being awful at crafts, like gluing my head to my shoulder trying to do some crafts or something like that, I'd say that I was an archer. And it really had become part of how I saw myself. It wasn't just something I did once or twice a week. It became something I was. I was an archer. I invested time and money and emotional energy into it. And that meant when I shot badly, it didn't feel like a bad session. It felt like I was bad. And when I stopped going, it didn't feel like a break. It felt like avoidance, like I was letting something down. And I suppose in doing that, I also let myself down. All of that pressure, by the way, was self-inflicted. No coach, no club, no one else on the shooting line. Nobody put pressure on me. I put it there myself. I had a plan. I had timelines. I had expectations for where I thought I should be a year after shooting. I can be very, very bullheaded, very, very stubborn, and there was no budging on my thought process. And I thought by autumn and winter 2025, I would be doing competitions, nothing major, just turning up, putting my name on a score sheet, experiencing that side of archery properly, and I didn't do a single one. Not one. Mostly it was for financial reasons, to be honest, and I watched the season roll on. And every competition I didn't enter felt like a quiet reminder that I wasn't following through. And at first I told myself I'll do the next one, find a way, or that I'll wait until I felt more consistent. And then autumn became winter, and winter is nearly over, and I still hadn't stood on a competition line. And that disappointed me more than I expected. It frustrated me, not because anyone cared, because no one does, but because it clashed with how I saw myself. At that stage, I was supposed to be good at this. I was supposed to be scoring off the charts. I was supposed to be strong, have endurance, and absolutely achieving my goal. And in that moment, I wasn't. One of the things I've always said about archery is that I don't dwell on it once I leave the hall. And for a long time, that was true. I beat myself up in the hall, make decisions, make corrections, process it there, and then leave it behind. But somewhere along the line, that boundary started to blur. not massively and not in a dramatic way, but just enough to make a difference. I'd leave the hall feeling flat rather than neutral. I feel a low level irritation that didn't quite disappear. It wasn't colossal, but it was there. It was noticeable. It was enough to slowly turn into something like a dread, for want of a better word, like not fear, not anxiety, just this kind of resistance, a sense of not wanting to put myself back into that headspace. Once that feeling appeared, even faintly, it changed the relationship. Archery stopped being a release and it started feeling like a task, something to manage, something that costs more than it gives, something I had to do rather than wanted to do. And that's when avoiding the bow started to make sense. That's when real life obstacles felt like relief. And that's when the possibility of competition stopped feeling exciting and starting to feel impossible. Because competitions don't just expose your shooting, I suppose they expose what's going on in your head. And when I couldn't even stand comfortably with myself in the hall physically and mentally, the idea of doing that under pressure just felt like too much. So I didn't enter. If I had really, really wanted to, nothing would have stopped me. And every competition I skipped added another quiet layer of disappointment. Another mark against the plan I'd made. Another reason to feel like I was falling short. And the 2-month break didn't happen suddenly. It happened gradually. It was a missed session here, justified absences. And it happened until not shooting became normal. During that time, I have noticed the physical changes too. My back has gotten weaker. I had built it up to a relatively good strength, not perfect, not wonderful, but it was a lot stronger than it was when I first started. The stability had faded, and I already know that the brace is going to be on it for a while when I go back. And I've piled on weight I can't afford to have. And part of it is down to not attending the shoots twice a week. Even those couple of hours twice a week made a difference. But also part of the issue was being on so many steroids because I was so sick. Did you know, by the way, people who take steroids, that they expect you to put on weight when you take them? Because I never knew that before. It never actually affected me before. But this time I was put on 2 different doses, 2 separate weeks, and I piled on the weight. I could not stop eating, and that never affected me before. And putting on weight with them never affected me before. But I was talking to somebody, a nurse, and she said, "Oh yeah, when people are prescribed steroids, we expect them to put on at least 7 pounds, per prescription." I was like, "Are you actually taking the piss? What in the hell is that?" So essentially, I should have put on a stone or something like that from the steroids I was on, which I wish it was just a stone. But anywho, but I'm going to blame all of that on perimenopause because that's just what I do at this stage. Like my rambling right now, perimenopause. The thing is that these changes sting more than I had expected because it feels like proof that stopping had consequences. But I'm trying to reframe that. I didn't fail by stepping away. I reached a point where I was relating to archery in an unhealthy way. The mistake wasn't stopping. The mistake was not realizing, not addressing it, and not adjusting my expectations sooner. And that brings me to now. I'm going back tomorrow, and it's not as a comeback, not to make up for lost time, not to resurrect the plan I had before, because that plan belongs to a version of me who didn't really understand this phase and who really, by this age, should know that pink isn't her colour and to stop wearing rose tinted glasses, but refuses to. Tomorrow is about just showing up. Walking into the hall, setting up, letting my body do what it can do on the day and not what I thought it should be doing by now. I'm not expecting it to feel good straight away. It might feel awkward, it might feel frustrating, who knows? It might feel humbling, but it has to be done. I remember how it used to feel, how excited I used to be, how proud I used to be. And that's enough. Burnout has taught me something important. I wasn't tired of archery. I was tired of the pressure I wrapped around it, pressure that I created. I wasn't tired of expectations that didn't leave room for being human, for work, illness, setbacks, or just needing space. Expectations that I created. And tomorrow isn't a reset. It's not a redemption thing. It's not anything dramatic. It's just step back into the space with fewer demands, a bit more gentleness and kindness towards myself, stop beating myself up. The bow is still the same, the haul is still the same, and tomorrow I'll just go back and see how it feels, and that's really all I can do. It's not about scores or form or proving anything, it's just about showing up and taking it one session at a time, and that's enough for now. So thank you, as always, for listening. I will speak to you all again soon, hopefully. It might be another few weeks, but there will be more episodes. I care about this podcast too much to let it go. I'm also setting the groundwork for another podcast on a completely different subject. And we'll be putting a call out for people to participate in that. So if you've ever wanted to be on a podcast and talking about yourself, then maybe it'll be the one for you. This podcast will still be here and we will still have episodes. They might just be very, very hit and miss. Hopefully there'll be more come spring. I appreciate your continued support. Genuinely, you really do. Stay in by the wall and mind the arrows. Take care.